Well, greetings, entrepreneurs. I want to welcome you back for another episode of Savvy-Preneur podcast. And today I have a special guest with me. Her name is Stephanie Ward, and she is the entrepreneur of Stand Tall Parenting. And let me just get you ready for just the answers that she has and the information that she has for you parents out there. I think you're going to have a real treat today. So let me give you a bit of her background, and we're going to get started in asking her some questions. So Stephanie Ward has a Bachelor of Arts in Social Work. She's a certified educator in infant massage and a certified parent educator. Stephanie has extensive experience working with families and children. She provides families with child development, parents education, and infant massage classes, and offers professional development training to social service professionals. Stephanie is passionate about working with families, teaching and shifting our societal lenses from judgment to empathy to build a connection with community, individuals, and families from a place of compassion. And just me talking with her, I wish I'd known her when I was raising my children. I tell you no lie. So welcome to Savvy-Preneur podcast, Stephanie. I am so delighted that you're here today. So my first question to you is, what made you get started in parent education?
Yes, thank you so much, Michelle. I am so honored and excited to have this discussion with you. So I started Stand Tall Parenting to create a platform for all parents looking for healthy and effective parenting strategies. And that came up when I was working as a social worker and as a CalLearn worker and eligibility worker for the county. And I was thrilled to receive a promotion working with teens, and this was through the CalLearn eligibility position. And so I kept hearing, the teens and, their parents, that ongoing cycle of unhealthy parenting strategies, but they didn't know where to go. They didn't know where they can seek that support, or they maybe attended a parenting class that didn't necessarily resonate with them. So I just kind of took the task, which is surprising for me because I did not look at myself as an educator or a presenter. I'm actually, before doing what I do now, I used to be terrified of public speaking. I would get all flushed in the face. I would not do anything like that. So for me to step out of my comfort zone, because I'm very passionate to help families, and that's kind of where I created Stand Tall Parenting. And I really want parents to break those unhealthy parenting cycles, right? There's a lot of antiquated and a lot of, what I teach in my class is evidence-based information. So there's a lot of information, especially with social media. I mean, this was 10 plus years ago. Now social media has grown. So people will share a lot of inaccurate information. So it's important that that parents get evidence-based information. That's what I teach within my class. And so I'm just really passionate about working alongside families, to give parents the experience of, and I use a lot of analogies, that calm boat ride when there's crashing waves, right? When they're working with their toddlers. Right. And then there's going to be moments that you're going to turn over, but I will show you healthy strategies on how to flip that boat over, how to continue to move forward, and how to move through those crashing waves. And, I work with children of all ages, from toddler to teens, because that's usually when parents will contact me and say, my toddler this or my teen this. And, that's when parents just really, really need that support.
And I think that's so key because, as a parent myself, we really, where do we learn our parenting styles from? Like, either we get it from our parents or we learn it from other people. So most of the times it's not always the right way to parent, right? So I'm so glad that you touched on that topic. But I want to also ask you, because I see that you're certified also in infant massage. So can you basically tell, like, how does that benefit the baby or the newborn by getting infant massages?
Thank you for that question. So with the baby massage, it really helps parents, bridge that gap of how to create that bonding experience.
Mhm.
Touch is so beautiful.
Mm.
If any of you, Google rescuing hug, and it'll give you an example of the power of touch. So it's a little snippet on your own.
Mhm.
So with baby massage, it's best to start, maybe the first 6 months. So that way you gain all of the massage strokes, but
Mhm.
it's really geared towards children, up to 12 months. I do get some, 8-month-old children. And so what the benefits are is decreased stress, right? It releases that oxytocin that we need. It really helps promote better sleep for both parent and baby,
Mhm.
helps with language development because we're labeling the areas of the body that you're massaging. And so some of you might be thinking, do I massage the baby? I actually have my own baby doll, Sophia. So if you ever want to sign up and meet her, you can meet her. And I demonstrate the strokes on the doll, and you massage your baby, because that is your opportunity to bond with your baby, to read your baby's cues, figuring out what their likes and dislikes are.
Mm.
I recently started to do a class for fathers, and I was so thrilled to have my class full of fathers really wanting to learn how to massage their baby. Because oftentimes dads, typically go back to work and it's the
Mhm.
mom that stays home. And so dads feel disconnected. So
Yes.
baby massage bridged that gap to learn about their baby, to have that bonding time. And
Mhm.
with the massages, it's not like a long massage. It can be anywhere from 5 minutes to 25 minutes. And
Mhm.
that's for you to read the cues of your baby.
Right.
And it's such a beautiful thing. You have to really experience it in order to
Right.
grasp, the importance of the massage. And that's something that I highly recommend every parent to take. I even have some expecting parents. So right when the baby is born, they're able to massage their baby. Also with, foster or adopted parents, if they're, so they can create that bonding opportunity.
Wow, I think that is awesome. I love that about the baby massage. But I want to ask you this question because I know that we're in the throes of August, and some children have already went back to school. For some, they'll be going back to school in September. So for parents who are, having their toddler or their baby, maybe they're going back to work because they've been on maternity leave and now they have to go back to work. So how do you help that mother prepare that she doesn't have anxiety separation for leaving her child with someone else? But then what are the questions that you basically would help parents with to ask providers of daycare, preschool, and maybe even having a babysitter?
Mhm. So I'll answer the first question in like how to handle with the separation anxiety. And you're going to have anxiety because we're human beings, right? So
Exactly.
it's about having a routine, the self-care. I always talk about self-care routine on how to manage your anxiety. Is it deep breathing? Is it working out? Is it meditation? Anything that helps relieve that, because there's nothing that will ever take away stress or anxiety. And if someone claims that,
Right.
that's a red flag. So I
Okay.
wanted to make that point out there. So for like with toddlers, going, starting their first day of school, if you're able to do like a trial about 2 weeks prior, going to the school, getting them acquainted with a new environment,
Mhm.
walking around, because children can sense parents' feelings,
Mhm.
right? So if a parent is feeling anxious, the parent's feeling anxious, the child's going to feel anxious.
Right.
And so schedule like a fun activity on the first day of school,
Mhm.
to help the both of you decrease stress. It can
Right.
just be, walking outside and blowing bubbles, right? And then
Right.
when you walk into the classroom, meet with the teacher, go in, if you can park, walk with your child.
Mhm.
And meet with the teacher or the teacher aide, and talk about, what is it that your child enjoys, and let's say blowing bubbles is something that your children
Right.
enjoy. Then you can tell a teacher like, oh, my son or my daughter loves the bubbles, do you want to show her, or him, how do you blow the bubbles? And
Mhm.
so once a parent or once the child knows that, okay, my parent is comfortable with this adult, then they start to get comfortable,
Right.
right? That's why it's so crucial for us to find healthy ways. And then it's important to provide empathy because children are going to be crying.
Yeah.
So having power with your child, I always use this like a power with instead of
Right.
power over. Yeah,
Right.
we want to be able to have that, recognizing, I know, mommy or daddy, we have to go to work, but we're gonna plan this afterwards. I know you're sad. I know you're gonna miss us. I'm gonna miss you too, but we're gonna pick you up. We always want to stay away from telling untrue things to our kids
Mhm.
because that could be detrimental too, because you're trying
Right.
to establish trust and a healthy, um, you know, leaving routine. So we
Mhm.
never want to tell a parent, or tell a child, oh no, I'm going to be here the whole time, and then you're not. And we never want to walk away and just leave and try to distract the child because that can be create that ongoing anxiety. We
Mhm.
want to be able to be calm, to have enough time scheduled out so
Mhm.
you can be with your child. And even giving a photo of yourself to the child and say, when you miss mommy or daddy or brother and sister or,
Mhm.
grandma, grandpa, here's this photo. You can look at us. And then
Right.
plan something afterwards. Oh, when I pick you up, we're going to go to the park. We're going to go read a book and then really collaborate with the teacher.
Right.
For instance, if a child experienced trauma, a therapist might be beneficial.
Right.
And you want to avoid praises. And that's another thing. We don't want to say, okay, I'll give you this candy because
Exactly.
they're not increasing the reason why they're focused on the
Exactly.
external.
Oh, I think that's excellent points that you just brought up. And something came to my mind, especially for parents that work from home and maybe they're trying to like transition their child into daycare or like a preschool type of environment. Do you think it would be a good practice if sometimes the mom or the dad would pop in just to see how things are going within the school? Because sometimes that first week or two of a new environment, people can be on their best behavior, so you want to kind of get the gist when they're in the throes of that school year, that school term. Would you think that's something that is good for a parent to do, to jump in, like to just
And I know parents want to like be there, right?
not to
But
say
I would say, yeah, I would say the first 30 days, have your child get acquainted with everything. It's going to take
right,
some time. It's a new routine. They always say for a routine to be effective, you have to be considered consistent for 30 days. So
right.
after 30 days, check in with your child, see,
Mhm.
and we also want to make sure, are we doing this for ourselves or for the child?
For the child,
And we
right.
want to make that clear because if we're doing it for ourselves and that child's fine and they're okay on their own,
Mhm.
we may need to reassess that and say, you know what, my
Right.
child's fine. The teacher said that, they're
Mhm.
getting along with their peers, they're doing their homework. So we
Mhm.
want to allow that space. We want to give that autonomy for children,
Mhm.
and not try to control and
Yeah,
dictate everything. So
I
it's really like a case by case. Yeah, and it's really trying to, obviously if there's like a day where parents can join, absolutely, that would be fun, for parents to attend.
Well, I think that's an awesome point. And another point that I wanted to bring up, like when a parent is basically what I would say maybe going and looking at different daycares or different, centers for their child to go to, like what questions should they ask the staff so this way they'll know, because like you're teaching parents the different parenting styles that they should have, but they don't know how those staff members are going to relate to their child. Will they yell? Will they scream? Will they curse? Like, so how do you kind of get the, I don't know, the jump on knowing like how their environment is going to affect them with people who are taking care of them through the day?
Absolutely. And this is a question I get quite often.
Mhm.
So, regardless of if you're going to use a family or daycare provider, I mean, these questions are mostly towards daycare providers, and there's some that I'll go over that will definitely help with like family or friends.
Mhm.
But the first thing you want to ask is, do you have a current CPR first aid training?
Mhm.
Do they have a first aid kit? So when you walk in, let's just say a childcare setting, when you walk into that childcare setting, everything should be visible. There
Mhm.
should be a first aid kit. There should be a fire extinguisher, because if there's an emergency that's happening,
Right.
we don't want to go to a locked cabinet and get a key because things happen so
Exactly.
quickly. And we also want to have the license, the certificate visible and
Mhm.
current. So read that,
Mhm.
go to that, and there should be, a ratio. So every, if it's, I know with different states, there's different type of ratio, and I'm in California, but
Mhm.
it's ideal to have, for babies, every 3 babies, there should be 1 adult. Now, if
Oh,
you see 4 babies and 1 adult, that's a red flag. Even if they're like, oh no, we're transitioning, that's a red flag.
okay.
And your gut instinct when you walk into a facility, if
Right.
you feel something uncomfortable, and let's say your family or friend member saying, oh, you're overthinking it, go with your intuition, because oftentimes you are 100% right.
Right.
I've worked in this business for a long time. I've seen so many different um, unhealthy things happening in childcare. So go with your instinct. Don't ever think I'm being too sensitive or what have you.
Right.
And then also for toddlers, 5 to 1. So those
Mhm.
are kind of typically, the ratios you want to look into. And you want to go unannounced. You don't want to call and say, hey, I'm coming down, because they can put stuff away. You
Yeah.
want to see how it's going to be. You want to see how the receptionist is. You want to see how the teachers are, and making sure that you feel comfortable with them. And if you see a TVs
Right.
everywhere, that's another red flag,
Really?
because, you
Yes.
know, children need to learn. They learn through play, through peer to peer, and
Mhm.
making sure the toys are in new or working conditions is
Mhm.
so crucial, as well as training. Are these teachers trained? Or do they do ongoing professional development? For myself as a parent educator, I am consistently going to trainings. I'm going to the updated latest information. And I
Right.
actually do offer trainings for professionals, like social worker, early child educators, to help them, continue on their professional development. So asking those questions, and then also asking them, what types of limits do you set in place with your children? Now, if you're a parent where you're like, you know what, no spanking, no timeouts, and that's something in my class that I do not share, because spanking is ineffective and it promotes violence and abuse.
Mhm.
And then timeouts. Children are not learning why when they're in timeout. They're just learning that there's shame going on. But it's not about, not setting limits. It's important to set those boundaries. And while you're asking these questions, and if you notice that's, they're upset and like, oh, why are you asking all the questions? That's
Mhm.
another red flag. you
Exactly.
know, that's another red flag.
Yes.
It should just be easy, like when folks sign up for my, free consultation, they
Mhm.
can ask as many questions as they want. And I invite questions. I want you to ask questions. And so there are, as a parent and caregiver, you have the right to get information about substantiated or inconclusive complaints about a daycare setting. So
Right.
there's a phone number that I can provide you to find that out. So do your research, do your research. And when it comes to family or friends, again, you want to make sure there's CPR first aid training. You want to make sure that there's a plan in place. If we mentioned for like the spanking or the timeouts, you want to make sure that you feel comfortable with that family member or friend and that you're on the same page.
Oh, Stephanie, I think those are wonderful key points, and I think that will help a lot of parents out there. So now when it comes to toddlers and they're going through that terrible 2s and 3 stages, and they're maybe biting or hitting, and they're just showing all of this outward aggression because they're just wanting things. How do you set limits and boundaries with, with a practically a baby?
Yes, and that's the reason why I don't tell parents to spank, right? Because parents will come to me like, my toddler is kicking or hitting, or my teen and this and that. And I'm like, what methods do you use? oh,
Mhm.
I spank them or, slap them. It's like, well, you're modeling that it's
Mhm.
okay to be violent. And, we really need to change the laws around children. Every time we think of discipline, it's like you can spank, but you can't leave a mark. But we're not recognizing that emotional mark,
Exactly.
right? And we're modeling that to our child, that it's okay to be physically harmed, and they can get into a domestic violence situation or teen dating situation. And it's important that we are modeling healthy and effective strategies. So first and foremost is to stay away from any physical, even slapping or like pushing and
Mhm.
throwing something or hitting something near a child is considered that physical violence. So we want to be able to stay away from that.
Mhm.
um, so I want to give an example of to answer your
Sure.
question of
Sure.
the everywhere I go, if I'm shopping out in the community, I'm always like listening to how parents interact.
Mhm.
And so recently, I was in Target,
Mhm.
and this child was telling, their mom, mom, I'm tired. And that was the tone she was using. And then, mom was just, shopping. And
Mhm.
then the toddler said, mom, I'm tired. And
Right.
again, mom was ignoring. And the third time, she was screaming and crying and says, Mom, I am tired.
Wow.
And so the mom, spanked her, and she started crying, and she was like, you stop being a brat, you're in my way, everything. And so that whole situation could have been avoided,
Right.
definitely. And so thinking about routine. So if you have a routine for your child, eating, sleeping, play, homework, or what have you, we want to stick to those routines. Children thrive from structure.
Right.
So if we don't have a routine set in place, I invite you to create those routines and stick by them.
Mhm.
And thinking about, okay, am I going into the store? Is this something that I need to do right now?
Mhm.
Can I do a curbside pickup? I mean, that is so
Yeah,
convenient. You just go
exactly.
on your phone or your computer, and you're ready to go.
Mhm.
And really be mindful and be like, oh, is this around the time that my child eats or sleeps?
Mhm.
And sometimes parents will rush in. Okay, I can just rush in 5 minutes, right?
Mhm.
And I know for me, it's hard for me to rush in at Target. I always get caught
Exactly.
up with certain things.
Like, good luck
So
with that.
really being, yeah, really being realistic, and set up the expectation. Set
Mhm.
up that expectation if your child is going to go in the store with you and it's not hindering their routine.
Mhm.
And same thing, Target. I had a parent where their child was screaming and was like, I want a toy. Every time we go to the grocery store or to the store, I get a toy. And so
Wow.
the parent's like, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want this? And he was like, no, I already have that. I already have that. So it may seem harmless,
Mhm.
right, to give that dollar toy or that $5 toy,
Mhm.
right? But when we set that up for a child,
Mhm.
where we're going to the short term. And in my class, you get the long term. And it takes a little bit longer to get the long term, but
Mhm.
it's effective and it will be secure and it will be healthy. So we want to set that expectation. When we're going to go to store in about 5 minutes, and we're going to pick up, eggs, milk, and bread. You want to help me pick it out? Oh, look, grab some eggs.
Mhm.
Grab the bread. Oh, is the bread soft?
Mhm.
So involve the child into the shopping experience,
Wow.
especially with teens.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, as children grow older, some parents will feel like, well, my teen or my preteen's not going to be interested. Absolutely
Mhm.
not. They need as much support from
Exactly.
their parents at any age. So if there's something that, they want to cook,
Mhm.
have them print out a recipe, have them involved into the shopping experience. So you can help not only meet your needs of having an ease shopping experience, but also their needs of autonomy. Because toddlers and teens, they're always striving for that autonomy, that independence.
Those are some awesome points, and I wish I knew you when I was dealing with my teens. So I want to ask you this question because I know maybe some parents out there, especially parents who are divorced and they're co-parenting, and maybe the co-parent or the parent that the child is going to visit on holidays or weekends, that household has no structure, but the household that has the structure, the other parent is basically manipulating the child, maybe promising, like you said, giving the child different gifts and bad mouthing the other parent. But then when that child comes back into a structured environment, now they're kind of, I mean, trying to bend the rules or trying to give, maybe a hard time to the other parent. So how does that parent, handle that when they're basically trying to set structure in the home, especially with teens?
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. And I always say, set those boundaries. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times parents will feel uncomfortable with setting boundaries with their child
Mm-hmm.
because they're not able to set boundaries with adults. So
Mm-hmm.
I want you to reflect, if you're listening to this and thinking, I'm not able to set those boundaries, reflect as to why. What is it? Is it that we're trying to please the other person? And because that's definitely common that parents have shared with me. But what about yourself? What about your needs? What about your feelings? So I think just really setting those boundaries. And when you're consistent, I always do this as like my my
Right.
little boundary. When you're consistent, right? We don't want to bend, because if we're bending, then the adult or the child will know, okay, then this is not a limit, right? So
Mhm.
we always want to be clear about setting limits and setting those limits with our child. Unfortunately, and fortunately, I guess you can say, we can't change how people are going to react, like a partner or what have you, but it's up to us
Mm.
on, okay, in my house, these are our limits, and being
Right.
consistent. And even if your child says, well, but dad or mom does it or grandma does it, and be like, you know what, that's what they do in their house, but in
Mhm.
my house, this is what we do. And when you're confident and when you're calm and you're explaining the why, it really, really helps with your with your child's brain development. So when a
Mhm.
child's born, they're born with 100 billion neurons. So your brain sculpture is creating those strong connections through the experiences. Of
Mhm.
course, the child coming from that parent's unstructured household and going to your household, there might be like a day or two where you're like, oh, why is this happening? But as
Right.
long as you are consistent, it will even out and your child will know, okay, these are the limits. And it's about being consistent and being calm. And I had a grandparent that I worked with where she kept her limits so, consistent that the first day she's like, it got a little chaotic, but
Mhm.
then they knew in grandma's house, these are the limits. And then when we would go to the other house, it would be all over the place. So I would just say, do the best you can, practice that self-care. It's okay to be frustrated by that significant other,
Right.
right? So self-empathy comes into play,
Mhm.
but also knowing that these are my boundaries, these are my limits, and doing your part, because we cannot make someone do something. We have to make sure that we're consistent.
Exactly. I love that. So my next question for you is like how can you help like a family say that they're in a toxic environment and the child is hearing all of this toxicity going on, they can't focus in school, maybe the parent who is providing that support and care for them are basically at their wits end as well. So how can you help them, or like what advice can you give them to help their child to be more focused in school, because they're dealing with a lot at home. So now they're going to school and they're just basically their grades are suffering because of it. So what
Mhm.
advice can you give for parents who are going through that?
Yeah, no, that's so important to ask. And I think the first thing is to provide a consistent, safe space for the child.
Mhm.
Children just need that one adult in their life to
Mhm.
let them know, I am here for you. This is a safe environment for you. I love you. I'm here for you. I'm not going to leave, right? If a child's dealing with abandonment issues, or if there's a lot of toxic, stress happening in the home, as long as you are providing that safe space for the child, your child will thrive because they know that they can get to you if you're not able to leave that environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you are,
Mm-hmm.
plan out how you're going to leave the environment and where you're going to go. And so, like I mentioned before, I know a lot of parents will say, oh, I'm not, my child's going to suffer, because of this. But it's important that, that we provide that safe and brave space for our child and allow child to express anger and sadness.
Right. Well, I thank you for that. So I got one last question before I let you come on and basically tell the audience what offerings that you have out there for them, because you've given so much information. And I'm sure for those who are listening, you don't have to worry about writing it down because she has something in store for you at the end of this podcast. So my last question basically is for those teens who are at that stage where they're acting out, maybe they're being disrespectful to the parent, they're not following the rules, cleaning up, and the parent is basically at their wits end. They're trying everything, maybe even some, preventive measures to help the child, but they're just not getting it. Like, what advice would you give to those parents who are trying to basically, show that empathy toward their child, but they're just not getting it?
I would say first thing, like I've been saying before, having that self-care, because if we're dysregulated, our
Mhm.
children can sense that. So
Mm.
that would be the first thing, to make sure you have a routine set in place. And also reflecting on, I want every parent to ask themselves this question, why do you want to have children?
Mm.
Is it because of family? Is it because once we have our reason why we want to have children, right? Then we can move through that experience. Like some parents will say, I wanted to have children because I wanted to create healthy environments. All
Mhm.
right, think about how are you going to create those healthy environments?
Mhm.
And parenting, like I mentioned before, is not easy. It is
Mhm.
not easy, but with the tools that I'll be sharing in my class with you, it will
Mhm.
help decrease the parenting stress. And like I said, if there's someone out there saying, oh, you're not going to have stress, that's a red flag. That's a red flag.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I would definitely say, making sure that you have your self-care
Mm.
um, consistent, because that's something a lot of parents will struggle with, because what happens is when we don't have our self-care in place, there's an explosion going on. We might not tolerate certain things from our child, and we
Mm.
feel like we're in this loop. Oh, I'm trying to do this for my child. I bought this for my child. My child should respect me, right? So it's important that we start with that, and that we are consistent with boundaries. And children will test the boundaries to see, is this consistent? Are they going to bend? And once they know, that you're consistent, and they know why you're saying the limits, we want to refrain from because I said so. That's just going to create a dysregulation moment. We want to explain reasons why. So we set limits for family values. We set limits for safety and also socialization. So that's the reasons why we set limits with our children.
Oh, Stephanie, I think that's such a good question. Like, why did you want to have children? Because for some, I'm just speaking, some people even that I've talked to have said, because I wanted someone to love me. No one in my family loves me. So me having a child, that was someone who would love me. And sometimes we don't realize that it may be a selfish thing, especially if we don't have sometimes the capacity to care for that individual the way it needs to be cared for, and not to, say it in a disrespectful or mean way, but to say, sometimes we have children for the wrong reasons, because we may feel as though, well, I'm gonna soothe this trauma or this pain with this baby, and we have not healed from it. And I don't know, you're the expert on that, so can you give me a little bit feedback, and then I'm going to let you go into your offerings on that, like basically.
Um,
Yeah.
feedback on how to move through that. I mean, I always say, if you're working through trauma, making sure that you are getting that support.
Mm-hmm.
If it's that through therapy or anything that can help you get through it, maybe support group.
Yeah.
We want to refrain from using our family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
They are good to share, but if we're going to them for consistent concerns,
Mm-hmm.
then that's the indication that you need to seek a professional and a therapist to help you work through that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because we never want to have children and then be in a state where we can't provide for them, not just financially, but even emotionally. And I think that that is the key, because we love children. To me, are just blessings from God. I love children. I'm going to be a grandma myself in a couple of months. So I am so excited for that. So I want you to go ahead and basically tell the audience what it is that you have in store for them.
Yes, absolutely. So the childcare tips, I'll send you a PDF once you sign up for my newsletter, so you'll be better equipped for when you are trying to find that perfect childcare setting for you, whether it's a facility or a family or friends, as well as 15% off my recorded series. And that's a huge treat because you get to watch it anytime you want. So you get 15% off. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you'll get 20% off my services. So my infant massage class, my parent coaching, my recorded classes, you will get that great deal. So
And I think those are awesome offerings. And for my listeners out there listening to this podcast, if you would like for Stephanie to come back and do a part 2, because she has so much information, we haven't really even touched the surface of what she has to share. A way for it to be more interactive for you guys out there is, why don't you go ahead and submit those questions, and this way when we come back on the part 2 of the podcast, she can be answering your questions in real time. I mean, it's going to be pre-recorded, but you'll get to have your questions answered, so this way you'll have that information, and I'm sure it will help you in your parenting to help you get where you need to be. So Stephanie, I thank you so much for joining me today on Savvy-Preneur podcast. I think the information that you have given out is like tremendous. Again, I'm going to continue to say it. I wish I would have known you when I was raising my children. So do you have any last thoughts for our audience before you go?
No, thank you so much. I had so much fun. Like you said, we can talk hours and hours about this, but I want to end with this. Just know that you are enough and you are doing your best. It's not about, being perfect, because there's no such thing as perfect. If I were to ask each and every one of you, what is the definition of perfection? We would have a different definition. So therefore, perfection doesn't exist, right? So I want you to give yourself grace. You are doing the best for your family, for your parents. And listening to this is showing that you are trying to get this information out there. So give yourself credit that you are here, that you're showing up for yourself, and that you're showing up for your children.
Yes. So again, thank you, Stephanie. And we say bye to our listening audience, and I'll be back with you for another episode of Savvy-Preneur podcast. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.